Fallout show is airing with its second season soon, and I wanted to spend some time delving into the foundational Western films that set the ground for what the show is doing. The thing I love about the show is it hits the space between Western, sci-fi, and post-apocalypse in a really neat, exciting, fun way. And this is the territory of engaging the world in its undone, opened up state. So in each one, we're dealing with who we are outside of society or at the very creation of society. How we take on the responsibility of our own desire ourselves. So we're engaging with ethics, politics, just the fabric of society itself, like how you work with this very fabric of who we are. So this stuff is incredibly undoing and incredibly exciting at the same time, and I think that's what Fallout does really well. So there's a clear historical trajectory here. In the 30s to 50s or so, we have the Western, where we're us at the frontier, engaging ethics, without any outside guarantees for how we should be or what we need to do. And that became the science fiction. The frontier was pushed off into space with, space race and whatnot. And obviously that fantasy of getting out into space crumbled and failed over time, and that became the post-apocalypse. The world fell away, and we realized the frontier isn't an out there thing. It's here. It's been here the whole time. That's the wonderful thing about post-apocalypses. And this is my area of expertise. I delved into it myself by writing Where We've Made It Dark, and I engage the idea of apocalypse as philosophy. I use philosophy as the way to get to these structures. And it's only by doing this that you actually avoid the stand-ins that we put there ourselves of ideology. So fingers crossed about the new upcoming Fallout season, but let's talk about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is a huge frame of reference and a very exciting, radical work of fiction that is still worth watching today. In fact, I don't think it would be shocking to me if we could get a show or a film as good as The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance again. We're introduced to a frontier town that's being harassed by a brutish bandit, Liberty Valance, but the town's growing and needs to expand. And Valance is paid off by the local cattle ranchers who want things to stay as they are, that want things to stay lawless. So, we're at this conflict between law and might makes right. And in comes Jimmy Stewart, a lawyer who is instantly robbed and beaten brutally by Liberty Valance, but he persists and insists that the town needs to mobilize, to vote to become part of the country, to get the stuff of civilization working for them. He works as a dishwasher to start paying his way, and the sexism of the time ridicules him for it, but he persists through it anyway, very heroically. And when he realizes that the people around him aren't educated, he lifts them up by becoming their teacher and teaching people how to read and learning the necessary functions of society through, the Constitution, through statehood, etc. So this shows how politics itself, statehood and law, fights power relations. The cattle ranchers in the area are paying off the bandits and fighting to keep things as they are, keep things lawless so that they can keep making money. Capitalism isn't on the side of law, it's on the side of lawlessness and power relations. But it's by coming together that the town ends up fighting this. And we get the heroism of the little guy. We see that statehood and being a part of a country, following law, brings people together from all walks of life with their frailties. The whole community is full of people with different types of qualities that keep them from being the in-group. So we see politics is defined here as the mobilization of the out-group against power relations. We get people who don't belong crowded into this beautiful scene with the schoolhouse. So we have stutterers and simpletons. We have a cowardly sheriff whose children are all Spanish-speaking and clinging to the education in a beautiful way. In the lessons, a black man who's a hired hand forgets the line that all men are created equal, and this shows how society does not live up to this standard, that we fall short of it and need to politically advocate for it. Today, as much as back in the West. The only group that doesn't get properly depicted are Native Americans, but they're referred to as part of the lawless tradition that we're all coming from. So they're grouped with the cattle ranchers, and there's this pride of, being on the frontier, but we need to make this cut to vote for law, to mobilize ourselves with the written word of law. That's what defines law. So it's not this racist point, even though some of the language might be a little dated. But everyone comes together through law. Alienation in front of the text of the law is what makes us all equal, what allows us to come together, and keeps us from just advocating for our own self-interest. And the undoing thing that's so beautiful about Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is, how do you make that happen when you have all of this violence that's around you with the figure of Valance? We see the figure of law, Jimmy Stewart, brought down to a point of lawlessness, where he has to make his stand against the violence that's happening to him, around him, and is willing to give up everything for it, his life. But for law to be founded, it needs the man on the frontier, John Wayne, who saves Jimmy Stewart's life, takes the blame for shooting Valance, enables Jimmy Stewart to become the politician that advocates for everyone and makes law happen in the town. But it comes at the full cost of John Wayne's hopes and dreams in life. He loses everything. He loses the love of his life, and he loses the world in which he lives. So this is what's structurally necessary. Law is a mode of violence, but the violence has to be disavowed and put into the territory of myth. So we get the famous line of printing the myth. So it's not the noble lie that fools people, but it's this thing that structurally explains the way things are to ourselves. So there's a ton in philosophy to talk about law and its founding gesture of violence, and how it has to be disavowed but still there as a myth. So it's still connected. It's extant. But the post-apocalypses are engaging this fabric directly, not just in this woohoo, let's all have fun, we're in the Wild West now, but how do you get to this cut that enables society to function again when everything's gone? How do you found society itself? That's what's so interesting about this territory. How do you get people to come together? So most post-apocalypses aren't political in the broad sense, but you do reach these points at a very base level just between individuals. So you get to political action at its 0 point, this openness to each other and advocating for each other, in the sense that no one belongs in a post-apocalypse. We all, walls or not, we're all radically exposed. That's the thing that we're getting to. So this is a hugely ethical film with an exciting engagement with politics and the figure of both law and lawlessness. Both taking these ethical stands of radical exposure, but what do we do with it? Where do we go? John Wayne gives up everything, but Jimmy Stewart is radically exposed. So we need both figures, but it's about getting to that radical exposure. And that is something I also get into with Where We've Made It Dark.